Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jillian and I channel the Akashic records. So I've already opened up the records today and I wanted to make a follow-up video from my video last week on Atlantis, and today I'm going to be asking the records about Lemuria. So let's get into it. So as I was even opening the records, I was feeling into like hues of pink and purple and like indigo and like magenta, very much these sort of like more feminine colors. As probably many of you have heard, Atlantis was more of a masculine based society. They were more in the masculine energy, and Lemuria is more of a feminine based society. So I get a lot of like soft, kind of relaxed, kind of floaty vibes coming from Lemuria. Now, Lemuria did end up collapsing because of the shadow feminine. So essentially, everything has a light energy and a dark energy. And as we know about Atlantis, it went a little too far into the technology, into the ego, into the, search for power and control. And Lemuria, what happened with that civilization is they got too wrapped up in emotions. They tied too much of who they were and of what they were becoming to their emotional expression. Now, we are not our emotions. We are the witness and the observer of our emotions. But Lemurians really they attached to their emotions. They didn't really fully understand the difference of not being their emotions, and they were really like obsessed and like really like connected. Obsessed is kind of the word to their emotions. So as humans here on earth, we have this large spectrum of emotions that we can feel. We have, the deep, dark, really heavy, really challenging emotions. And then we also have these really high vibrational love, light, peace, enlightenment type emotions. So in Lemuria, the civilization started off in more of those loving light frequencies. So they started off, really like tapping into these higher vibrational emotions and almost becoming obsessed with the search and the chase for these higher emotions. And there's a large intensity to emotions here. So what began to happen in this like search for these emotions, if you think about a lot of like addictions, a lot of spiritual bypassing, a lot of these ways that we can become attached to only feeling the good emotions. And eventually, the suppression of all of these lower frequency emotions started to unravel the community, because people really like manipulative is like a word that really keeps coming up. People became very manipulative. They really learned how to use other people's emotions against them to get what they want. So how to not trick people, but how to coerce people and oh, I know this person likes this, so I'm going to do this, give this to them, or take this away from them so that they will give me what I want. So once again, it was this shadow component of the expression that really like took a hold on Lemuria and on the people of Lemuria. Lemuria was a matriarch. So Lemuria was really honoring the women, really focusing on taking care of the women. Really, like, the women would sit around in circles and they would use their intuitions and they would, connect in with their intuitive gifts and abilities in order to help out the community. But people began taking advantage of this. People began, lying, not telling truthful premonitions, not telling truthful intuition. They began using their gifts for power and for control and for, dominating over the other people. It's almost as though their gifts originally were their emotions, but then their emotions kind of overtook them and kind of took hold of them. Lemuria is very watery, like very Piscean energy. People, there was not a lot of, like people almost spoke through frequency as well. Like people weren't, there wasn't as much, spoken word. There was a lot of like, a lot of work done in the astral realms, a lot of work done just through thought, just through like what's that word, telepathy. There would be a lot of like unspoken stuff happening too, and people began discovering these unspoken realms and began tapping into more of the potentially negative forces in these realms. Yeah, so the astral realm, like as much as there was the physical realm, these beings and these people were very connected to the astral realm. So they could see the fairies, they could see the dragons. I had a girl ask me on my TikTok if there was dragons in Lemuria, and yes, there was, but they weren't physical dragons. They were energetic dragons, and people were able to tap into and basically see these dragons and these fairies and these gnomes and like all of these beings and these creatures that we think of as mythological creatures. The way that humans were living and expanding, they were very tapped into this astral realm, so they were very connected to these beings. Now the challenges with the astral realm is that the beings in this realm are still connected to their ego. So some of these beings have good intentions and they want to help others, and they want to help with the expansion, and they're beings of light. But there's also beings in the astral realm who are beings of dark and who are tricksters and who are they'll tell you what you want to hear, but they actually have their own secret agendas that they are running by. And so these astral beings started to infiltrate these light beings of Lemuria. The people of Lemuria originally were very innocent. They were like young, like they were very connected to their inner child. They were very connected to joy, to playfulness, to softness, all of these positive qualities of the feminine. They were very in tune with this. Life was very lighthearted. They did have men there, like protectors of the village, you could say. These kind of like okay, well, we'll get into the men in a moment, but the people there themselves were very originally lighthearted and loving and really in tune with their feminine energy, and everything was very easy and breezy. But as their abilities and their gifts developed and they started to connect in more of the astral, they weren't fully conscious and aware of the implications of the astral realm. So these more darker beings would show up and say they were beings of the light, say they were these high vibrational like angels and archangels, and they would come in, and even like Pleiadians and Syrians, and they would come in saying, we're good and we want to help you and we're here to help, but they would actually be sort of like negative, bad beings that were tricking the people and were getting in their heads and getting in their minds and messing with their emotions and messing with their intuitions and making them think, some of them think they had like these secret powers or that they were better than others and whatever else. And ultimately there was like a psychic warfare that began to happen in Lemuria. So people began, putting curses on others and like using their psychic gifts for negative things and for bad things. And they started forming these little communities, these little pods of people like there would be like these leaders, and everyone started to separate, and they would have, you know, followers, leaders and followers, and there would be these little like pods of people, and they were actually being run by beings in the astral who were like infiltrating the minds and the energies of these physical beings, and they started warring with each other in little ways. Like they started psychic warring with each other. There was like psychic warfare happening between the people in these communities. And some people did decide to leave Lemuria. You know, there was the awakened few that saw through this, that were like, this isn't right. This isn't the way we're supposed to be. You know, I don't actually trust these beings. These beings aren't of the light. And they were exiled. They were, you know, told they had to leave the community. They were shunned by the community. You know, lots of sisterhood wounding coming from beings in these communities as well. Like people who were born in Lemuria, you know, they might have difficulties with psychic attacks. They might find that they're more susceptible to psychic attacks. They might have a lot of sisterhood wounding. They might not trust their gifts or trust their intuition. They especially might not trust their guides and trust beings in the higher realms, because, you know, these astral beings were tricksters, and they were, and so it's hard for you know, some of the trauma that people who lived in Lemuria might carry is that they don't trust their guides, and they don't trust the beings on the other side because they've been tricked by them before. And ultimately these beings got in the heads of the people and started getting them to do their bidding, and started convincing them, you know, that the other ones were bad, and they started warring with each other, and not in like a combative war, but like with psychic energy, and with like illness and sickness and manipulation, and ultimately turning these people against themselves, like making people go crazy, and making people not trust themselves, and making people not love themselves. And like it was an internal battle that a lot of these Lemurians had. It was like they were at war with themselves inside, because they didn't understand what was going on, and they were like feeling like they were going crazy. And so how did Lemuria fall? So they're just showing me like people just like laying down and like going to sleep and not waking up. So essentially what happened with Lemuria is people got so wrapped up in these astral realms and these other realms and these realms that weren't of earth, that they completely disconnected from physical reality. And they would be operating in these higher realms, but they wouldn't be connected to their physicalness and to their physicality, and they died off. They just died off. The ones who didn't leave Lemuria, there was no like big war, big bang, anything that happened like that. The people just like stopped reproducing, and died early, and got wrapped up in these astral realms, and, you know, committed suicide or killed themselves because they were trying to escape this physical world to be more in the astral. Yeah, there was a lot of they just couldn't understand, and didn't have the capability to understand the danger of working in the astral realm without proper protection, and without properly understanding the different levels of consciousness, and by essentially giving their power away to these beings that were in the astral realm. Yeah. I do want to ask about the men in Lemuria. There was men in Lemuria, but everyone was more feminine. So even the men weren't strong in their masculine energies. They were more in the feminine energies as well. So they were, you know, there wasn't a lot of monogamous relationships. There was a lot of like polyamory, like people, being with more than one person at a time, men having multiple wives, or women, being with multiple men. There wasn't a lot of like traditional relationships happening here. There was a lot of community though. Like everyone was really together. They'd all eat together in their little groups, right? They would all be together. It was very like sister wives kind of type energy, and very uh like community minded. So everyone at the beginning, everyone was looking out for each other, and then eventually they all isolated themselves in these groups, so it kind of turned negative eventually. But in the beginning, they were very much a very like community, and there was a lot of fluidity, but the men weren't very solid and structured, and the men weren't grounded. And really we need a balance of healthy masculine and energy. So we need that balance and that solid structured energy of men, in order to stay grounded into earth and grounded into the physical reality. And there was a lack of that in Lemuria, so everyone really was not in their physical bodies, and not taking care of their physical bodies, and not eating proper food or drinking water eventually. And essentially eventually their physical bodies just couldn't do it anymore, and people were dying, and people were going to sleep and not waking up, and people were committing suicide or going crazy, and or purposely doing like drinking something that was gonna like kill them or take them to the other side. There was a lot of that kind of stuff happening, and essentially eventually it just withered away. Some, like I said, some people saw through this. There was those who were a little bit more enlightened, or they just saw things differently, and they did end up escaping and going to different lands and different places and starting their own different colonies. And I see people going to like the continent of Africa. That was where a lot of them went to after Lemuria. Little islands kind of around some of the tribes that we still have on Earth today. They are actually, they would have like ancestors or descendants of Lemuria. Yeah, yeah. Okay, and then so on the topic of dragons, because I did have a follower on my TikTok ask me if there were dragons in Lemuria. So there wasn't the physical dragons in Lemuria. There was the non-physical astral dragons. And another one of my followers on TikTok was talking about how some of the dragons are not good. And so I, I feel like it's really important to touch on the astral realm here. And as I say this, I get this like big wave of energy, because the astral realm itself is so large, and I will do another video on the astral realm. I'm gonna have to sit down and write out questions that I want to ask about the astral realm. So in another video that I'll do, if you have any questions about the astral realm, please comment below and I'll include it in my next video. I'm not going to get super into the astral realm on my video today. But the astral realm, we have beings of the light and beings of the dark. And so there are lower vibrational dragons. Yes, there are dragons that are more connected to the draconians. There are dragons that are more obsessed with power and control, and kind of similarly to what I was speaking about earlier, they would infiltrate the minds of the people and, get in their ear and convince them, that what they were doing was right, or that they needed to do this for the higher good, or that they needed to serve this person, or that they needed to, they would like get in their ear, and they would basically convince them to go against themselves, or to go against their inner knowing or their inner truth, or what is good and pure and true for them, and do their more like dark bidding, or hurt another in the name of protecting themselves, but not understanding that when we hurt another, we are also hurting ourselves. So there was a lot of you know, us versus them projecting, like, if you, like, victim energy, like, if you hurt me, I am the victim, and so you deserve this. You deserve this bad thing that's happening to you. And so, yeah, these dragons were able to get into the mind, and it wasn't just dragons, I will say, but some of the dragons are connected to draconians, yes. But at the same breath, we do have some really beautiful, high vibrational, like, I'm like just seeing just like these massive wings, these like massive like blues and whites and golds and like pinks. Like, we do have these very high vibrational dragons that are like, they're fires of transmutation. They burn up anything that doesn't belong. They burn up anything that no longer serves, you know, connected to almost like a bit of Kali energy as well. I'm feeling this like unconditionally loving sort of fiery energy, this protective energy in the name of unconditional love. Very, very powerful beings. And so there are some really good unconditionally loving dragons. And remember, unconditional love isn't necessarily unconditional, you know, no boundaries or putting everybody else before yourself. Like, unconditional love stands on like pure self-love and what's for the highest good of everyone, and burning up anything that is not for the highest good. Some of these lower vibrational dragons, you know, they do sometimes pretend that they're the higher vibrational ones to kind of attach to you and connect to you and get in your mind. And you know, we all have shadow. We all believe, like, we all have these protective mechanisms and these things that we do that we believe are, you know, helping us or serving us or protecting us. And sometimes we can't see the other person's perspective or point of view, or we make them out to be the bad guy and we're the good guy, you know. And these you know, dark beings in the astral would take advantage of that and would really, you know, essentially convince people to give their power away to them, and to the detriment of our physical bodies, like really to the detriment of the physical body, which was really what was a big component that was missing in Lemuria eventually, was this connection to the physical body and to, you know, earth and life on earth. And it didn't begin that way, but just over time, with the lack of the masculine energy, that was just something that happened to Lemuria. Okay, I feel like that is complete for that today. So once again, if you have any other questions about Lemuria, please leave me a comment. If you have any questions about the astral realm, I think I would like to do my next video on that. So stay tuned. I'm very curious about the astral realm myself. I personally don't do a lot of work in the astral realm. I work with the third heaven and higher mostly, and the astral realm is what we know as the second heaven. So I'm going to do a full video on that. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, please please subscribe. I also have a membership platform, a Patreon account, where I post stuff that I don't post anywhere else on the internet. So more conspiracy theory type stuff. I've been doing a lot of stuff about celebrities and reptilians right now. So if you're into that or curious about that, please check that out. And if you would like your own session in the Akashic Records, I'm going to include my booking system below as well if you have questions that you'd like to ask for your Akashic Records. So thank you so much for being here, sending so much love to you, and we will see you in the next one.